Humans, and apparently countries, have a natural desire to strive for superiority. This way, history can be viewed as a record of struggles for power. Now, another heated battle for domination is taking place, which can be seen in the confrontation between the United States and Russia over Ukraine. But an even more intense competition exists between the United States and China. China's economic might has grown to the point that it poses a threat to the United States. Economic power determines dominance just as much as military strength. Well, it's logical for the United States to be concerned about China's pursuit. However, some experts doubt China will overtake the US since China has more flaws than most people know. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly why China's plan to overtake the US is failing. Stick around until the end of this video to learn the major mistake President Xi Jinping is making. Let's begin with demographic issues. China is undeniably a huge country. Its population was estimated to be 1.41 billion in 2020. China's population is more than 4 times that of the US, which has roughly 330 million people. Now here's the important thing. GDP is computed by multiplying productivity by the population, so a larger population is advantageous for a greater GDP. Based on past growth rate trends, this statistic is the foundation for most projections that the Chinese economy will exceed the US economy. However, those kinds of forecasts are only guesswork that fail to consider the population's qualitative elements. In China, the qualitative characteristics of its people are beginning to harm growth. The epidemic functioned as a mechanism to reduce birth rates in several countries. When entire families are compelled to stay at home, most households experience increased anxiety about the future. So, when financial concerns are considered, stress levels rise even higher. Well, it's not the kind of weather that would put anyone in a good mood. Compared to other countries, China's disease containment methods have been extremely severe. People aren't allowed to go outside at all. This inevitably causes more stress in households. Under those conditions, the chances of the low birth rate rebounding are practically very low to none at all. China's birth rate has been declining since before the outbreak. The country revoked its one-child policy in 2016, but this alone will not increase fertility rates. Simply amending the rules wouldn't erase memories of decades of schooling telling people that they were only allowed to have one kid, with consequences for those who broke the law. The total fertility rate, which measures the average number of children that a woman of reproductive ability is predicted to bear during her lifetime, continues at 1.3. During the pandemic, the situation has only become worse. The Chinese National Bureau of Statistics predicted that 10.6 million children would be born in China in 2021. This compares to about 12 million in 2020, indicating that the different incentive programs have proven ineffective. The number of births and deaths in 2021 was approximately equal, and with a continuous lockdown on some parts of China, its population would soon fall. A diminishing population doesn't automatically indicate the end of GDP growth. China can still achieve growth through higher productivity. The issue emerges when population reduction is combined with a maturing population. In this situation, senior citizens depart the labour market faster than young people enter to replace them. It's a problem many countries are dealing with, and it's most visible in China. Unless President Xi Jinping can solve it, China surpassing the US is really unlikely. Aside from its demographic, another reason is insufficient soft power. But before we go further, are you enjoying the video? Please give it a like and hit the subscribe button if you like the business, economy, and crypto content. It really helps me to grow the channel. Now let's get back to the topic. Even if the US doesn't pull it in, China is unlikely to overtake them. The cause for this is a lack of soft power. Soft power can be viewed as the crowning achievement of a country's domination or standing. You can't rule the world until you can conquer it through cultural products. US cultural products are currently in a class of their own, circulating worldwide. Even in the 21st century, the US remains enormously influential through its films and television. So how about China? Despite its rich history and time-honoured traditions, it's generated no cultural products to be proud of. China may have the economic muscle to threaten the US, but it's still in its infancy in terms of soft power. It's achieved global success with only 2 cultural items in the 4 decades since it enacted reforms and openness. Those include the science fiction novel The Three-Body Problem and the short-form video app TikTok. Even those achievements may only be considered partial. The Three-Body Problem earned the Hugo Award in 2015, considered the Nobel Prize in science fiction. Its author, Liu Zixing, was the first Asian to do so. The book is, without a doubt, a piece of genius. However, its success is still restricted to the science fiction genre. It's not only failed to grow its base, but the follow-ups have been disappointing. TikTok is in a similar scenario. Due to a lack of Chinese content, it hasn't worked out as a portal for distributing culture. And among other Asian countries, soft power is rising in South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Popular South Korean music, films, and television programs have joined the ranks of the world's best. Japanese animation is still massively influential. China, on the other hand, has yet to build that kind of soft power. The answer is self-evident. The state itself suppresses creativity. The success of the Three-Body Problem may be mainly traced back to the celebrities who advocated for the book in various media. This is impossible in China, as the Chinese government strictly controls non-patriotic or ordinary speech. When communication lines are hindered, creativity dies. Though Asian culture is now widely consumed in the West, Chinese culture's market share is minimal at best. China definitely has a vibrant and diverse culture. The issue is that its government isn't really interested in encouraging or strengthening cultural activity within its borders. According to the Chinese government, information undermines stability. Under these kinds of conditions, promoting Chinese culture abroad becomes pretty difficult. The Chinese government also restricts the entry of foreign cultural items into the country. It makes sense that Chinese culture has had less opportunity to globalize. Aside from censorship, apathy is another element isolating Chinese culture from the rest of the world. China's obsession with doing everything the Chinese way is hurting the country's soft power. As a result, China and its companies' competitiveness has inevitably declined. Other significant challenges inhibiting China's progress are astronomical debt and extreme inequality. While the latter is a significant issue in and of itself, the bigger concern is that China is attempting to address inequality through force. The country's aim for common prosperity will inevitably harm the vitality of Chinese firms, undermining their growth potential. In China, private companies are increasingly becoming public and subject to state controls. Though the country's leaders wish to implement Chinese-style capitalism, such a strategy may hinder entrepreneurship and medium Chinese enterprises' competitiveness in the long run. While the method can effectively stimulate growth in emerging businesses, it'll negatively influence industries that require creativity and a risk-taking attitude. And although China is striving to rebuild its economic and financial systems without upsetting its society, it's uncertain whether it can accomplish this without changes to the country's ruling system, which is the root cause of the disparity. Chinese President Xi Jinping must simultaneously achieve two seemingly incompatible goals, ideals that previous Chinese leaders have worked to achieve for centuries: growth and equality. Unfortunately, the road to these destinations is long and tortuous, and inequality in China is only rising. Debt is another major issue in the country, particularly among municipal administrations. The real estate market, which accounted for 30% of China's GDP, was the primary driver of the Chinese economy. However, the debt explosion caused by the China Evergrande Group's bankruptcy may impact local governments, which have previously compensated for budgetary deficits by selling land to real estate developers. This is no longer possible. Local government finances will gradually deteriorate, and regional disparities will worsen. The conflict between the opulent coastal zone and the impoverished western region may be revealed, causing societal instability. In case you didn't know, the Chinese government has set zero COVID, 5% economic growth, and debt reduction as its three key political goals. Of course, that last target is already failing due to worries that austerity policies aimed at debt reduction and stabilization may lead to economic stagnation. In such an event, will China be able to attain its other two objectives? With that, developing the highly transmissible Omicron strain has put China's zero-COVID strategy in danger. Due to China's low caseloads, few Chinese people have evolved a natural immunity to the COVID-19 virus. The efficacy of Chinese vaccinations is likewise debatable. Rigid lockdowns for the sake of 0% COVID transmission are themselves barriers to growth. If the lockdowns fail, China may face the same economic upheaval that gripped the world early in the pandemic. COVID-19 is having an impact on countries all around the world, and China will not be an exception for very long. What's supposed to happen will happen. Will China be able to maintain 5% economic growth under these conditions? Now, let's talk about the history of Pax Americana. For years, the United States became the world's most powerful military and economic power. It was previously predicted that Japan, which joined the ranks of wealthy nations before becoming an aging society, would outperform the US in terms of economic growth. This turned out to be nothing more than a pipe dream. So what about China? China's population is already aging at a time when the country has yet to amass significant wealth. Astronomical expenditures will be required to ensure that China's aging population doesn't spark social instability, and China may be unable to bear the cost. President Xi Jinping is also putting pressure on corporations, which are the engine of economic growth. More importantly, China's strength is no longer low-cost labour. In labour-intensive industries, the country is losing ground. However, this doesn't imply that the government has achieved sufficient competitiveness in high-tech industries with high added value. All of these elements can contribute to social instability. To make matters worse, President Xi Jinping has been talking about destroying the US. Documents and speeches have been found that shed light on what Xi Jinping wants to do, and his words are pretty alarming. The Chinese Communist Party held its 19th National Congress in Beijing 5 years ago, where Xi stood in the spotlight in the Great Hall of the People and read his prepared remarks out loud for more than 3 hours. The things that he said remind us that there are influential people who hate the American way of life and are sure that their system is better in every way, and it only reflects his empathy towards the USA. With that, US policymakers have shown a clear tendency to ignore these kinds of points of view and the bad things that they mean. To do their jobs well, US civilian and military leaders must treat the reasons why the CPC acts the way it does with the utmost professional respect and resist the urge to write off the ideology of the Chinese government as irrelevant. Given all this, it's wishful thinking to see China winning in its race against the United States. China must resolve the primary challenges to obtain a competitive advantage over American dominance. Clearly, it's debatable whether China can overcome these issues under its current governance system. To what extent the ruling class can improve itself is a finite question, and the solution must be structural. But to expect this from power with no limit is a contradiction. Then, it's clear what the outcome of the tough competition between the US and China will be. Do you think China will overtake the US? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch our previous video about why China's economy is collapsing. And don't forget to smash the subscribe button. I make deep dives like this every week where I uncover the secrets of money and markets.